because they're huge. And then they pull inside and they start to dissect all the pieces of this picture. For that reason, they're always leaning towards lower stimulus situations. If their brain becomes overstimulated, it will shut down. The prefrontal cortex drops out on a PET scan, and their amygdala, their fight, flight, conserve, freeze, withdrawal, kicks in overload. So it is very important to understand that they're not rude, they're not antisocial. Their brain just is naturally self-stimulated. It doesn't need the extra. Then you have the other 30%, or the other opposite end of the spectrum over here, and we're the extroverts. I gotta love your extroverts, because I am one. No, they have naturally very sleepy brains. My brother-in-law, we sadly lost him a few years ago. He was an extreme extrovert. When he would come, this was back in the late 70s, when he would come date my sister, if you did not, he was high extrovert. If you did not openly engage with him in a conversation, I am not exaggerating, I promise you, within 10 minutes, he'd be like, he'd be out, and you'd be like, Greg, and he'd be like, and I'm like, Greg, you know? That's because their brains are so naturally sleepy that if they don't get external stimulus, it literally shuts off, okay? So this is why you have to be understanding of the extroverts in the world, because they're the ones that have to run around and they're constantly doing things that are going to feed that. They're taking pictures of the world with these tiny little telephoto lenses. So they got to take, in order to get all the information that introvert got, they have to run around and take hundreds of pictures, right? So they're physically constantly moving to stay awake. That's what their brain needs. They're leading towards, they'll go to the mall, not because they want to go shopping, just to keep their brain happy. They may not realize they're doing it, but that's what their brain is driving them to. Now here's where the nurture kicks in. That facet, that can of worms. How many extroverts do you think get told to sit down and shut up? They're making too much noise. How many little extroverts in school get in trouble because they're constantly fidgeting? How many introverts get criticized because they hide behind their mother and won't say hello to that stranger? Do any of you relate to that? Have any of you been criticized on your natural stimulus level of your brain? I want that to stop today. You're going to have to start embracing that and living that way loud and proud. Now, 40% are right in the middle, right? How many of you have said to yourself when you've ever heard these personality things go, they're like, well, you know, sometimes I feel like an extrovert, but sometimes I feel like an introvert, so I really don't know what I am. I'm strange. Have you ever felt that way? Chances are you're part of the 40% of the population that are what we call ambiverts. It means their brain's just taking pictures of the world with a normal lens, right? It's not telephoto, it's not wide angle, it's just, you know, in a day, about 8 hours stimulus is good, 8 hours not is fine. They can function as an extrovert today, but then tomorrow they want downtime. All right, that's one of the facets of the brain personality connection. The next one that I want to talk about is the brain quadrant dominance. This is fascinating. So this really, that hand exercise that I had you do, really helps you to understand this. So these are the 4 quadrants of the brain. And out of the 4 quadrants of the brain, according to Richard Hare, we will spend up to 1/100th the amount of energy. Okay, 1/100th the amount of energy. So what it takes to fire a 1-watt light bulb. Interestingly enough, the diagonally opposite, this is really important, diagonally opposite will take up to 100 times as much energy. Now this QR code is for a little assessment that they also have papers for. Some of these wonderful assistants have a sheet of paper. You can either do it online right now. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. You can do it online, or you can do it on the physical paper if you'd like. So we can hand out the physical paper to anyone would like it. The idea here is to identify, now, on the website or on this, this little sheet, there are 7 markers for each of these 4 main quadrants. And when by the way, when we're talking about that, this is left brain, that's right brain. And I'm going to explain this in a little bit more detail in just a minute. on the actual assessment, the online, the Big Brain Personality Connection Assessment, it has 27 markers for each of the 4 quadrants. So this is just a fun one that I do for presentations that kind of gives you a little bit of a taste. What I want you to do, if you have the paper, online you have to, if you're doing the digital, it's forced choice, right? You have to pick one. What I want you to do with the paper is I want you to make a notch next to everything that applies to you or that you feel fits you and your personality, and here's the thing, naturally. Naturally. Not what you went to school for, not what you got your degree in, but what if you were doing for 2 hours in the day, or 10 hours in the day, it feels like it was only 2. Okay, so we're going to give you about 1 more minute on that, and then we're going to kind of talk about it. So I'll endeavor to be quiet now, which is really hard for an extroverted auditory female. I got lots of words. Lots of words. Once you have it completed, if you're doing the paper version, just kind of circle whichever of those 4s or of those line items you got the most in. Okay, and I'm going to start explaining what those 4 quadrants are. So when you look at the brain, you've got the brain is naturally divided by fissures. You've got the large fissure that divides the 2 hemispheres, right and left hemisphere. You also have a main fissure that divides the the front and back, right? So anterior and posterior portions of the brain. When you go through, there are certain characteristics, there are certain tasks that take certain areas of the brain. So when you are doing things like logical, inductive, deductive reasoning, you are telling people what to do, you're delegating authority, you are making fact-based decisions, right? Facts in, facts out, doing all kinds of that fact-based problem solving, you are utilizing primarily the front left quadrant of the brain. Which means that is, if that's where you fold your hands, if that's where you spend 1/100th amount of energy, then you are naturally gifted at these things, right? This is what we call the boss BQD or the boss brain quadrant dominance. I give them the red triangle because the red is a very strong, passionate color, subconsciously processed in your subconscious. And so this is a very strong personality, right? You pretty much recognize the boss in the room because the boss is the one that's telling everybody else what to do. It's their natural gifts. Now, I gave them the the triangle because sometimes their personality can be a little bit prickly. Everything is facts in and facts out. Now, to give you an example, I am one of 5 sisters. Years ago, back in probably around 2000, when I had all this information down, oh no, it was probably more like 2010. I was out shopping with my sister. My niece was with us, and we were just sitting at lunch going, it's so interesting how the same styles that were popular then were the same ones that were in 1982. And I make the comment, I'm like, man, I just need to lose 50 pounds, because if I lost 50 pounds, I could pull all those clothes out from underneath the bed that I'm storing. I would have a completely in-style wardrobe, never spend a penny, and nobody would be the wiser. My sister, Chris, who is a boss brain, she looks at me, she says, Julie, get rid of those clothes. You're wasting space, you're never gonna lose the weight. Well, you can imagine that my initial reaction was to go for her jugular, but thankfully I knew this information. It saved her from a trip to the hospital and me from a trip to jail because I maintained control. The point is it was facts in, facts out. Ladies and gentlemen, I would love to show you a picture of my 3 beautiful boys. They are all now in their 30s. My youngest son came into this world in 1992 at 9 pounds, 14 ounces, 22.5 inches long, and he was not C-section. Okay? All right? Do you think these hips will ever be the same size they were in 1982? Right? No, not happening. That's how Chris saw it. Facts in, facts out. Now here's where the nurture piece comes in. Is this where society wants to see women? No. So for the 20% or so of the female population that are naturally gifted, DNA wired to be a boss brain, they have a really hard time owning that natural gift because of the expectations of other people. Okay, we're going to go down to the back. They're oftentimes forced to be the caretaker, which is the back right, and that's going to take them 100 times as much energy second for second, and they wonder why in their 30s they're exhausted. Okay, the master coordinator is the back left. This is where all of our organization go on in our brain. So when we're sequencing things, when we're learning spelling, the Wernicke's area is in this section of the brain. This is a section of the brain that's home of understanding language, spelling. So when we are using these skill sets, sequencing things, alphabetizing things, organizing things, tracking time and money, because it's all in this quadrant of the brain. We're using this quadrant of the brain. So people who naturally use this portion of the brain with the greatest amount of ease, this becomes part of their personality. They're dependable, they're practical. I give them this is supposed to be blue, but it looks kind of purple. The blue square, because blue actually calms the brain subconsciously. It lowers your blood pressure. Some studies have shown it lowers your blood pressure, lowers your appetite, and lowers your heart rate. So they're the type of people that if you ask them to do something, if they accept, they're going to do it, and they're going to do it to the detail. So that's why I give them the blue, because you can relax and count on that. Square, because everything that they do is compartmentalized. Everything is in their nice little compartments. All right, now we're going to jump to the right side of the brain. The right side of the brain, interesting fact about the right side of the brain, is it has many more neural connections to the limbic system. The limbic system is the home of emotion. All right, so right brainers are naturally gifted by their DNA code in expressing more emotion. All right, so real quickly, the nurture, this is where all of your peacekeeping, harmony, connecting goes on. This is the home of music, is back here in the back right portion of the brain. Therefore, most of these individuals are harmonious in their speech, in their actions, in their decorating. They are very connected to nature. They're very connected to people. They are connected to family. They are connected to everything. That's why their shape is a circle. All right. Green, because they're very connected to nature, and green is a color that brings up nature in your mind. For them, they're the ones who always, maybe dot their eyes with a smiley face, that kind of thing. Very, very connected. All right. Women do get rewarded for being in this area. However, they also, if this is their brain quadrant dominance, they also get criticized for being too emotional. It's like you can't win. Right? So if this is you, own it, sister. Go ahead and shed a tear. I don't care. That's your natural gift. Right? Feel it. We need the highly sensitive people in our lives, which is a lot of your HSPs are nurturers. Right? We need them. Without them, we would be a mess. The last of the four quadrants is the anterior right. This is the front right. This is the innovator brain quadrant dominance. This is where all of your big picture thinking takes place. Out of the box thinking, we don't like boxes. We don't like coloring in between the lines. We like to create our own boxes and make our own lines and then jump right over them as soon as we make them. All right? Yes. They're energized by innovation. We are the ones who have a hard time going to sleep at night because there is constantly new ideas being brought into our brains. And I wouldn't doubt that most of this room is probably innovators. Why? Because the home of entrepreneurialism has been identified, and it is right here in the front right. So most entrepreneurs do tend to score out as innovators. This is where abstract thinking goes on. So this is where we have those big, brilliant ideas that other people maybe have not thought of, or we're building creatively on new things. For us, the challenge is, what's the hardest part of the brain to reach and work out of 100 times as much difficult is where time and money and details are tracked. In order to get any of your big, beautiful ideas out to fruition, you need to do the details. So that's our Achilles heel. That is why we love our master coordinators, because they do all the details for us. We just give them the big ideas. So that's your brain quadrant dominance. So I want you to stop and think, where am I, and have I ever been criticized for what I now know is my natural gift? If so, that's where the critical Karens and the nasty Nellies come up into our heads, right? Now we're going to talk about the difference in the male-female brain. This is a fun one. This is a fun one. There is a biochemical difference in between, oh no, please don't do the timing. There's a biochemical difference in the brains in different brains of the male and female. If the Y chromosome is present, at 6 weeks gestation, the brain gets a chemical bath. That chemical bath changes the brain in 12 main areas. So we're not talking about gender preference here. We're just simply talking about the fact that the brain changes. 5 of those main areas that I always like to highlight are, number 1, the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum is the bridgeway between the right and left hemisphere of the brain. It is how information goes from left hemisphere to right hemisphere. In the average woman's brain, we have our corpus callosum is larger in size. We have more neural pathways, and those neural pathways are larger in diameter. So our brain looks a little bit like this. Major freeway, on-ramps, off-ramps, all this kinds of stuff. Every single car on this road is a cognitive thought. Now, technically, I will tell you, there's no such thing as multitasking at any nanosecond in the brain. You can only focus on one thing. What a woman does, because we have all these pathways, is we task switch. Right? And we task switch very well. What do you think a man's brain looks like? A two-lane country highway. All right? Two-lane country road. So if you as a woman are talking to a significant male in your life, and you take those thoughts, those cars, and you put them on that, what's going to happen? It's going to, yeah, he's going to be, it's like a major accident going on. Major. So we got to keep this in mind, but that's because of the corpus callosum. The next area of the brain that is different are the speech centers. Women, we have the tendency for multiple speech centers. The primary area of the brain is the front, where the speech center is the Broca's area, front left. Women, when women's are scanned, we tend to activate both the left and right hemisphere. And this area in the back of the brain, the Wernicke's area, it's 11% more dense with neurons in the average female than the average male. So quite frankly, we just have more real estate in our brain that is devoted to speech. That is why, on average, women speak 4 times as many words per day as men. The next area is the hippocampus. The hippocampus is, stop doing that. The hippocampus is in the average female versus the average male is larger. Okay, it's larger. This is a section of the brain that is very closely connected in converting short-term memory to long-term memory. Right, so at night when we go to bed and our brain does all its defragging, what it does is it takes all these things that happened and it converts them, and we have more area in our brain that's devoted to that. So you might have come across something like this in your life from time to time. Although he thought their argument had been settled at breakfast, Jim sensed that Sally had some unresolved issues. His hippocampus was like, psh, it's tiny. It doesn't work right. She's probably argued with something that, happened long before breakfast. She's mad about something that happened last year, and she remembers every detail of it because she has a better hippocampus. The corpus callosum, the speech centers, the hippocampus, and the hypothalamus nucleus. Now, the hypothalamus nucleus is more than twice as large in the average male, right? In the average male. Now, the average male, this research has shown that this is directly related to sexual behavior, right? Men have a 2-lane country road. If they have only one car on that road, they have two and a half larger chance that it's going to be if it's devoted to sex. Got it? So this is why men are more sexual beings. You literally now know what goes on in the brain, why that is. The last area that I want to bring out is the cingulate gyrus. Now, what's interesting about the cingulate gyrus is it's not necessarily different in size between the male and female brain. It's about the same size. Oops, I'll grab that in a minute. About the same size in between the male and female brain. However, on scans, women have greater blood flow into this area. So they're more attached to these behaviors by DNA code. Okay, you're starting to get the picture here? This is our DNA. This is our strength. This is what we are gifted in. This is our beauty. This is what we can do that men can't. I'm not picking on the men in the audience. I'm not picking on the men in the world. I love my man. I've been with him over 38 years. I have 3 beautiful sons. They all possess Y chromosomes, and I love them. I love them still, right? But there is an undeniable power of the female brain that they don't have. The question is, how well are you living up to that? How well are you embracing your natural gifts? Okay, I got to energize your brain here for a minute. I got to energize your brain. All right, so everybody jump up for a minute. We're going to do some brain work, all right? First, shake your hand. Oops, I shook my wedding ring right off. Shake your hands a little bit, okay? All right, we're going to do cross-body work. Cross-body work is excellent. Do a few of these, all right? Cross-body work, they discovered about 20 years ago, when you do cross-body work, you're causing your brain to think across the corpus callosum, which means you're activating multiple regions, okay? Now I need, if I can have a volunteer. Okay, come on up here. Now, everybody else, I want to grab a partner, please. So everybody split into twos. And here's what we're going to do. Everybody follow me. Okay, this is, we played this as kids, right? We go 1, 2, cross, 3, 4. Remember? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, we're going to do that. And while we're doing it, everybody choose a person who's going to go first. Everybody pick a number 1 and a number 2. So figure out who's going to go first. While you are doing this with your partner, and then we're going to take turns and the other person's going to do it. While we're doing this with his partner, this is what I want you to say to them out loud, right? Okay, ready? We'll demonstrate. I'll go first. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. I loved doing this exercise with you. I forgot to clap. I loved doing this exercise with you. And may you be victorious in everything that you do in your life. Okay, now everybody say it, okay? But you do the crossword at the same time. You're working your brain. Ready? Say it.
I love doing this exercise.
Yay.
You will be victorious in everything in your life.
I love it. Thank you. All right. Woo. One more high five. Yes. Thank you, Gabby, so much. So much. Everybody give Gabby a hand of applause for being my assistant. All right, I energized your brain, but there's a point to this. No, stay standing. Now you're going to talk to yourself, and this is really, really important. You're not going to talk out loud. You're going to say this in your mind, okay? And you're going to say it exactly the way it's read. You are not going to say, I am amazing. I want you to visualize yourself talking to your brain. Take your arms, go like this, okay? I want you to just tap for a minute. Just tap for a minute. Again, cross-body work activates the brain. Great thing to do. You sitting at the desk for 30 minutes, get up, stand up, do this. You're helping your brain. Now what I want you to do is I want you to really hug yourself. And I want you to close your eyes. Oh, well, no, don't close your eyes because you got to read this. I want you to visualize your brain, and I want you to tell your brain, you are amazing. I love your support. Say it a second time. With meaning. Really connect with your brain. You are amazing. I love your support. Ladies, anytime you are feeling down about yourself, I want you to stop. I want you to take a nice deep breathing, and I want you to say that to your brain, all right? Now, there is a specific, you can sit down now. There is a specific reason why I had you say what you said to your partner and what I had you say to yourself. What you think in your mind is critically important. One of the things I teach in my Change Your Brain, Control Your Mind, or Change Your Mind, Control Your Brain masterclass that we're in the midst of running one right now, and I'll tell you how you can get into that in a minute, is the brain listens to every single thought in your head. It listens to every record you play. It listens to everything you say. How many of you have ever spilt a glass of water, dropped your papers on the floor, tripped, and said, oh, that was stupid? Have you ever done that? What was listening? What does your brain now think? Thinks you're stupid. That's what you just told it. It believes everything you say, even if what you say is a lie. Ladies, you're not stupid. So one of the first things I tell my clients is omit that word and insert silly. I'd much rather be considered silly. My brain's okay with being silly. I am kind of silly, in case you haven't figured that part out already, right? Change the dialogue. Words have power to change the chemistry in your brain. Wonderful book called The Words Can Change Your Brain. It says that when we use words like love, peace, and loving kindness, what words did I tell you to tell your brain? And to tell your partner, I had you use the word love. I loved doing this with you. I love your support. right? When you use those words, we strengthen the frontal lobes. If you can read some of these things, the prefrontal cortex is responsible for higher thinking. It's what sets us apart from the animals. It is where our problem solving, our decision making, our figuring out, literally math, right? 1 + 1. So understanding the consequences of our actions. This is the part of the brain. And when you use these kinds of words, it activates this. When you use these positive words more often than the negative words, you actually can activate motivational centers in your brain. You want to motivate yourself to go do those hard tasks? You've got to use positive words. But when we're distracted, when we procrastinate and we didn't get stuff done during the day, do we use those positive words? No. So what we're doing is we're basically shooting ourselves in the foot. Because we're programming our brain to believe that there's something wrong with us. Instead of saying, this was interesting, let me figure out why I just did that. Huge difference in the dialogue, huge difference in the programming. Researchers at Harvard University discovered that positive words related to rewards, victory, and security can trigger the production of oxytocin. We all know that oxytocin is the bonding chemical. It's the neurochemical that secretes in your brain when you're nursing that newborn baby, which is a really important thing because that newborn baby is going to demand a lot out of you, and you need that oxytocin kick, right? So you don't run screaming from the house, right? It's important. Oxytocin will bond you to you. It will make you feel proud about your natural DNA code. Use the words right. The words you use matter. Because ladies, when negative words become the focus, when negative Nellie, critical Karen, pop up in your head, it is not just, oh, that negative self-talk that I got to get a hold of. No, 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 no. It actually prevents our brains from producing critical chemicals that are important in stress management. How many of you have stress? Like a little bit, right? So if you're stressed, is that a time when those negative voices might come up even more? Yeah. So what are you doing? You're shooting yourself in the foot because you're causing your brain to stop producing those important neurochemicals. And it increases the activity in the subcortical region of the amygdala, the thalamus, the hypothalamus, the areas. It activates the HPA axis, right? It shoots you into fight, flight, freeze, conserve, and withdraw. And when that happens, when the amygdala takes over, which, by the way, ladies, happens 80,000 times faster. 80,000, the action and the emotion portion of the brain. The emotion portion is 80,000 times faster. The action portion is 100 times faster. 80,000 and 100,000 times faster than the thinking portion of the brain. So you can find yourself sitting on the couch eating a pint of ice cream, or maybe it's a quart, and you don't even know why. You do not even know why, because your prefrontal cortex just went dark on a brain scan. Because the amygdala took over, hijacked it. And when that happens, it takes all the available oxygen, glucose, and micronutrition to get you from point A of danger to point B of safety. Because whatever it is that caused it to overtake, it felt it needed to do to save you. And that means that you don't even know what happened or why. That's why really getting into and learning how to change your mind and control your brain is so incredibly important. What are the things that cause us to do that? Well, here's a whole list. This is the can of worms, right? Birth order, that's going to affect you. Family expectations, societal expectations, what other people want, right? If you're the extrovert and I was raised by an alcoholic father. I was the extroverted little girl that was an innovator that always spoke her mind, and I always got in trouble and was told to sit down and shut up. Children were to be seen and not heard, right? And my father did that to us because he didn't want us talking about anything that was happening at home, right? Family expectations. The boss females, what's a societal expectation, right? Push them away. Society expectations, what do they expect out of you? Early childhood trauma is particularly devastating. The brain kind of has this emotional door that shuts and locks at puberty. So up to puberty, the brain is kind of trying to figure out how this individual fits into the world, right? So any of the trauma that happens in that early childhood, it is particularly devastating because it brands into the subregions of the brain, this is your place in the world. So if you've been abused, if you have been through any kind of criticism, any of that is telling you you're down here, you're wrong, you're bad, you're guilty. Then puberty hits, the brain goes, okay, we're going to lock the doors on this. You figured out, you know now where you're at in society, or how you fit in society. We're gonna move on to puberty and change the body the way the body needs to be changed to become an adult, right? So that's kind of what happens. Early childhood trauma is particularly devastating. Any abuses or trauma that's happened to you in your life will also cause you to suppress your natural gifts, what you're shamed for and what you're rewarded for. All of us want to be accepted, so we will adapt. Right? So the boss may not want to be criticized too much, especially if she's an introvert, because that's going to overly stimulate her brain. So she's going to hide her boss characteristics. Right? The little extrovert is going to hide their extrovertedness. The introvert is going to do everything possible to put themselves out and shake the hand of that person that, you know, they're freaking out because their brains are really stimulated, right? So what we're shamed for, what we're rewarded for, is going to be what is going to help us, or is going to cause us to slide into these negative thought patterns. And then you can wind up with what I consider a Grand Canyon of negative thought in your brain. So the wiring, that thought pattern is so deep, it's so ingrained in your brain that you feel it's natural. And your brain constantly goes there because it's such a deep groove that it's easy for it. It doesn't take any energy because it's this pattern that's so well worn. It's so well worn. So it just jumps right in there because that's what's easiest for it to do. It's going to take energy to reprogram. Reprogram, okay? So everyone needs to learn to control what I call the rants. These are your regularly reoccurring, automated, they just happen. Remember? 80,000 times faster. So you can walk past a picture, you can walk past a mirror, you can hear somebody say something, you can look at a photo book of growing up. And 80,000 times faster than you can even figure it out, that negative voice just went through your head. That negative, sick feeling just hit your stomach. So you have to learn how to control those. And it's so much more than just standing in front of the mirror and saying affirmations. I'm not beating up on affirmations. Affirmations are great. However, an affirmation is like taking a shovel to that Grand Canyon to try to fill it in. You have to reprogram. Ladies, you have to train your brain. Use neuroscience to your benefit. When you get that negative Nelly that jumps in, when you feel yourself, kind of that piece, that childhood trauma comes up and wants to just cave in, literally, physically, EMDR studies have shown us that this is how you desensitize these bad memories. You stand up and you do cross-body work. You stand up, you tap your shoulders, you give yourself a hug, and you tell your brain that you love it. You tell that little child, you're amazing. You're amazing. And by doing the physical cross-body work at the same time that you are reprogramming, you're seeding these new neural pathways, you are absolutely learning how to change your mind and control your brain. Very quickly, I want to show you something that's proof that this works. This is Daniel Kish. Daniel Kish is legally blind. He had his eyes removed by 13 months old because he had cancer in his eyes. He was riding a mountain bike. His mother never stopped him from doing anything. Let him climb trees, let him bought him his first bike, let him crash his first bike. He actually taught himself echolocation. That's how he can maneuver around. He clicks, and he can measure just like dolphins, right? He trained his brain. He trained his brain to do something that seems impossible. And how did he do it? because nobody stopped him, because nobody told him he couldn't. So I'm here to tell you, ladies, embrace your natural gifts. Hug yourself regularly. Embrace your natural gifts. If you are a boss, be loud and proud. Take charge. We need somebody to take charge because the innovators, we don't like having to make decisions. We're just out there creating, right? If you're a nurturer, please help me. If you're a master coordinator, please call me. I got bookwork I need done, right? Like, own it. Be proud of it. If we're more emotional or we talk more because we have more blood flow to our cingulate gyrus, or we have more larger areas in our brain devoted to language, own it. It is nothing to be ashamed of. I have a wonderful 6-week masterclass. I have some books. I would love to talk to you about the masterclass. And if you liked this information, the masterclass starts on the 6th. It's $97. That's it. If you like this information, you want to teach it to people, talk to me about my certification program, and we'll tell you how you can take this back. Now, I have one more brain exercise for you in the next 5 seconds. Everybody stand up, please. I want you to start doing this. Thank you for the standing ovation. That was amazing. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. You're incredible.
Oh, thank you.
I love it.
Thank you.